Hi, welcome to my art studio here in Oregon on the coast. I've been asked to explain a little bit about this book, Between These Hills, A Case for the New York Cumorah. The background to this is the issue in church history, LDS church history, about the Hill Cumorah. Now, many of you know that Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery and their contemporaries and successors all said that the Hill Cumorah was in New York. But lately, several LDS scholars claim that the real Hill Cumorah is down in Mexico, and that the Hill Cumorah in New York was just a false narrative that early members of the church came up with because they didn't know any better. They were just speculating about it, and which I disagree with for lots of reasons. But I realized no one had ever really explained in detail why the Hill Cumorah is in New York and why that's important. I'm going to just give you a little brief outline here of some three key topics. First is letter 7, which you can search for and read for yourself in the Joseph Smith papers. And then in that letter 7, it was Oliver Cowdery and Joseph Smith wrote a series of 8 historical essays about the early history of the church. And in essay number 7, which was called letter number 7 because that's how they published it, he included this quote about, he talked about the fact that here between these hills is where the Hill Cumorah, where the Nephites had their final battles and the Jaredites. And the reason he talked about this is he was identifying where the Hill Cumorah is. He talked about if you go on the mail road from Palmyra down to Manchester, there's a large hill on the left side, which is the Hill Cumorah that we all know today. But he said if you look west, about a mile away, there's another parallel ridge, another hill, and you can see it today still. It's still there. So it's about a mile-wide valley, and he said between these hills, that mile-wide distance between these hills, was where these battles took place. And he said it was a fact. In fact, several times he reiterated the fact of this is where it was located. And then the whole point of it was to show that the Hill Cumorah is in western New York. Now, what's fascinating about this is Oliver Cowdery and Joseph Smith wrote these letters partly in response to a book called Mormonism Unveiled that had been published in 1835 in Kirtland, or near Kirtland, in Ohio. And among other things, it was an anti-Mormon book, and it claimed that the Book of Mormon was fiction based on the writings of Solomon Spaulding. So in order to refute that, Oliver indicated here that it's not fiction because we know exactly where the Hill Cumorah was that it talked about in there. And the Hill Cumorah is the only reference, or the only site that Joseph and Oliver specifically identified and linked to the real world today, to the world of the Book of Mormon. So it was very important for them to refute this idea that the Book of Mormon is fiction by tying it to a real location. And so in this book, I talk about the church history aspects of it, but I also do a review of some of the extrinsic evidence, the scientific evidence that supports it, and some of the misconceptions we have. For example, I keep seeing people say there were 2 million Jaredites killed in the final battles. That's not at all what the text says. In fact, the text indicates that it was fewer than maybe 10,000 Jaredites, and that's what Oliver Cowdery, how he described it as well. It's the same with the Nephites and Lamanites. There was not 230,000 Nephites killed there. It's a far smaller number than that, and I explain all that in here so you can read it. Anyway, happy reading. Hope you enjoy it.